Assalamu alaikum. Here's an elaborate response to the comment on Jizyah, that is the capitation tax that non-Muslims have to pay to the Muslim state. Now, the source that I'm using here is a non-biased source whose author is Sir Thomas Arnold. He was a renowned historian and Orientalist in the early 20th century. And in this book, The Preaching of Islam, A History of the Propagation of the Muslim Faith, that was also published as The Spread of Islam in the World, he wrote in an elaborate manner and with so much details, and of course, all the sources were documented. He wrote about how Muslims spread and how their conquest was, and how they ruled other people that they took over their countries. Okay, let's start here as I've shown, as I highlighted the beginning of the paragraph. There is abundant evidence to show that the Christians in the early days of the Muhammadan or Muslim conquest had little to complain of in the way of religious disabilities. It is true that adherence to their ancient faith rendered them obnoxious to the payment of Jizyah, a word which originally denoted tribute of any kind paid by the non-Muslim subjects of the Arab Empire, but came later on to be used for the capitation tax as the fiscal system of the new rulers became fixed. But this jizya was too moderate to constitute a burden, seeing that it released them from the compulsory military service that was incumbent on their Muslim fellow subjects. Conversion to Islam was certainly attended by a certain pecuniary advantage, but this former religion could have had but little hold on a convert who abandoned it merely to gain exemption from the jizya. And now, instead of jizya, the convert had to pay the legal alms, zakat, annually levied on most kinds of movable and immovable property. Now, with some details on the jizya and its rates. The rates of jizya levied by the early conquerors were not uniform, and the great Muslim doctors or scholars, Abu Hanifa and Malik, are not in agreement on some of the less important details. The following facts taken from the Kitab al-Kharaj, drawn by Abu Yusuf at the request of Harun al-Rashid, the caliph, may be taken as generally representative of Muhammadan or Muslim procedure under the Abbasid Caliphate. The rich were to pay 48 dirhams a year. A dirham is a silver coin. 48 dirhams a year. The middle classes, 24 dirhams a year, while from the poor, i.e. the field laborers and artisans, only 12 dirhams were taken. This tax could be paid in kind, if desired: cattle, merchandise, household effects, even needles were to be accepted in lieu of specie, but not pigs, wine, or dead animals, because they are prohibited items or prohibited, they are prohibited in Islamic law. They are illicit. The tax was to be levied only on label-bodied males and not on women or children. The poor, who were dependent for their livelihood on alms, and the aged poor, who were incapable of work, were also specially accepted, and also the blind, the lame, the incurables, and the insane, unless they happened to be men of wealth. This same condition applied to priests and monks who were exempt if dependent on the alms of the rich, but had to pay if they were well to do and lived in comfort. The collectors of jizya were particularly instructed to show leniency and refrain from all harsh treatment or the infliction of corporal punishment in case of non payment. He resumes here, this tax was not imposed on the Christians as some would have us think as a penalty for their refusal to accept the Muslim faith, but was paid by them in common with the other dhimmis or non-Muslim subjects of the state whose religion precluded them from serving in the army, in return for the protection secured for them by the arms of the Muslims. When the people of Hira contributed the sum agreed upon, they expressly mentioned that they paid this jizya on condition that the Muslims and their leader protect us from those who would oppress us, whether they be Muslims or others. Again, in the treaty made by Khalid ibn al-Walid, the famous companion of the Prophet and Muslim leader, with some towns in the neighborhood of Hira, he writes, if we protect you, then jizya is due to us, but if we do not, then it is not due. How clearly this condition was recognized by the Mohammedans or Muslims may be judged from the following incident in the reign of Caliph Umar, the second Caliph, the second Muslim ruler. The Emperor Heraclius, the Roman Emperor Heraclius, had raised an enormous army with which to drive back the invading forces of the Muslims, who had, in consequence, to concentrate all their energies on the impending encounter. The Arab general Abu Ubaidah accordingly wrote to the governors of the conquered cities of Syria, ordering them to pay back all the jizya that had been collected from the cities, and wrote to the people saying, we give you back the money that we took from you, as we have received news that a strong force is advancing against us. The agreement between us was that we should protect you, and as this is not now in our power, we return you all that we took. But if we are victorious, we shall consider ourselves bound to you by the old terms of our agreement. In accordance with this order, enormous sums were paid back out of the state treasury, and the Christians called down the blessings on the heads of the Muslims, saying, may God give you rule over us again and make you victorious over the Romans. Had it been they would not have given us back anything, but would have taken all that remained with us. As stated above, the jizya was levied on the able-bodied males in lieu of the military service, which means instead of the military service, they would have been called upon to perform had they been Muslims. And it is very noticeable that when any Christian people served in the Muslim army, they were exempted from the payment of this tax. Such was the case with the tribe of Al-Jarajima, a Christian tribe in the neighborhood of Antioch, who made peace with the Muslims, promising to be their allies and fight on their side in battle, on condition that they should not be called upon to pay jizya and should receive their proper share of the booty. When the Arab conquests were pushed to the north of Persia in 22 Hijri, or the 22nd year of the Hijri date, a similar agreement was made with a frontier tribe, which was exempted from the payment of jizya in consideration of military service. We find similar instances in the remission of Jizyah in the case of Christians who served in the army or navy under the Turkish or the Ottoman rule. Living under this security of life and property and such toleration of religious thought, the Christian community, especially in the towns, enjoyed a flourishing prosperity in the early days of the Caliphate. Thank you for listening. You may find this book available in PDF form. Just Google The Preaching of Islam, Sir Thomas Arnold, and you will find many links, and this is one of them. And you can download the book and read it for yourselves. This is a very important source and reference, actually, to study about Muslim history from a non-biased writer. So non-Muslims will not say, hey, this is a biased source. This is a very close to objectivity source by a non-Muslim who was fair enough to approach the Muslim history objectively and with no bias. Thank you for listening, and hopefully I will be posting new videos soon. Have a nice day.